Hello, this is the second part in which I'm talking about what are the design criteria which I've chosen for my little darling amp that you can see in front of me. There are already a couple of things that I try to explain why I did them like I did them, and here are a few more aspects that I haven't really mentioned before, and some of them I'm just going to show you now when looking a little bit closer at the amplifier. What I said in the video already before is that here at the bottom we've got more or less what's associated to the power supply with the power transformer and the two chokes. And I wanted them to be as far away as possible from the signals. Especially if they are not really already amplified. So here at the top we have got the input section. You can see the sockets for the input, then kind of a shunt potentiometer, which compared to my last video now has got a nice wild wood or knob that I put onto it. So it's a cherry stick that I found somewhere out in the forest, and I just really chopped it to the right length and just put it onto the potentiometer, and yeah, I quite like it. It's really nice to use. The idea is, of course, that you keep the power transformer and everything which is not really a DC current as far away to limit the interference. The other speciality, I would say, where I really thought what would be the best arrangement is really how to position the transformers. And you can see that they are angled like 45° here, 45° here, and transversal for the medium choke. The reason for that is that if I have got some kind of field, magnetic fields exiting or not really being fully contained in the iron of the transformers, that it would have the least interference with the rest of the system, which means usually those magnetic lines or fields get out of what is the let's say their conductive material. So the iron of the transformers is on sharp edges where it's very easy, and also the flow normally gets concentrated, and I really just assumed that more or less what would be the radiation field coming from the transformers would be more in line with the iron. And this is why then you can also easily figure out this was a chosen configuration, because then it's more like almost forming a kind of a circle around the more sensitive areas that I've got somewhere here. For the output transformers, I just really try to apply a similar pattern in the way that they need to be relatively close to the output tubes, because I wanted to have just really short connections, obviously, but also that the transformers, even though they are already C-cores, which means that there's not really too much chance of any magnetic fields exiting, not really interacting with anything else, but also not to pick up anything from the power transformer. So I really put them into this direction here on both sides. So here left and right channel then are also maximum far away from each other, and the output of the transformers where the speakers are connected are also super short. I can just really show this here. You probably see it now. Last video I had the connectors really just soldered directly to the output wires on the transformer. What I've done here now is I drilled some holes into the wood. Then inside here there are some 4mm bushes into which the speaker connectors are connected, and just really pulling out a plug right now, so you can see roughly, hopefully if the focus is okay, this is the plug, this is just really the bush, and you just really put it in, and there's like a 2.5 centimeter, maybe 3 centimeter connection in between, and that's it. So really short, really easy, simple connections that I've done. What has changed after the last filming I've done of the Darling is that I worked a little bit on the power supply, and to show you, I'm gonna turn the whole thing so that you can see also the back side of it. You can see that compared to the last video, where there was just one of these switching power supplies, which was for the 12 volt heater or 12.6 volt heater for the output tubes, I've got now two. Because I thought maybe I'll try a DC supply with one of those things for the input tube, which then requires 6.3 volts of heater supply. So similar to what I said already previously, I used one of those 5 volt power supplies, and by adjusting this small little potentiometer, which somewhere sits here in the corner, you probably can't see, but if you ever used one of these really cheap Chinese supplies, you know it has got this adjustment knob, and I could just turn the voltage up to the required level. It's going onto a small little choke, which I've got here, and then would supply the heater. So the choke I also put onto the 12 volt power supply now for the power tube, and I tried the DC supply for the input tubes. And the difference in sound was quite significant, really significant, in a negative way, unfortunately. So we're replacing the AC heating, which came directly from the power transformer, with this power supply was a really big step backwards. It was really bad. What happened is that more or less this complete sound stage imploded and shrink a lot. And most of the qualities, I would even say, that I had compared to, let's say, other, even also class A amplifiers, completely disappeared. So there was hardly anything left as an advantage of having a Darling amp compared to any other kind of amplifier. So if you do so, not really a great idea, and you maybe replace your power supplies. This is also what I would like to do with the 12.6 volts now. Just really for the same reason, because I think that this is still something which holds back the true performance that's probably in the Darling amp. And I currently didn't have any alternative to heat the power tubes, but it's on the way, and I will swap out both of those switching supplies. This one I don't use anymore anyway. I switch back to the transformer supply, and this one will go out as soon as the new supply power transformers arrive. That is basically it, as far as I can tell, on the Darling amp. I've got quite a nice idea to just finally put it all in a package, and maybe this is something I'll show in a later video. The other thing which I already showed also, just really a bit of an overview of what I'm currently cooking or working on, is that I did the petit loudspeaker, and I made some cabinets. They are not really exactly the recommended dimensions, simply because of the wood that I had lying around in the house, which I wanted to use for the speakers. And there are other modifications that I've done. This is an active cabinet, so here maybe you can hear that it's really made to be kind of resonant is maybe in the wrong word, but it really has got some kind of an amplification, very simply speaking, a kind of an amplification effect that just really due to internal pressure, it puts the walls in motion and it transmits more of the sound that the small little tiny speaker is capable of. You can see also now that this is upside down, of course, so this is not how I would hear with a speaker. They are just really right now on the floor. The other modification which I've done is that I moved over to a slot port. So here you can see that this is about, I would say, about a 1.5 centimeter slot. I just really calculated the dimension, just don't remember it anymore. And here it's a plate which then runs in parallel to the back wall to form the slot. And it's just really clamped. So there's a kind of a snug fit, a press fit for this piece of wood, and I can slide it up and down to tune a little bit the reflex or the open baffle cabinet frequency. And because I was lazy drilling some holes, but also keep things simple, I really put a cheap wire through the slot directly to connect it to the amplifier. Then there's also no glue on the whole cabinet. The edges are still sharp, and the fixations are all done by screws. I think it worked out to have 7 centimeters. It kind of was quite a good gap that worked on all of the different dimensions. The dimensions that I knew came up with is to roughly keep the height to width to thickness ratio like in original. But like said, I wanted to just really have got some wood that I have lying around, which was basically 30 centimeter and 20 centimeter, which then I use for the external dimension. And I combined it in such a way that I also have got some tuned frequencies for the internal dimensions of the speaker, which here has got a ratio of 1:2 in terms of height to width, and it corresponds to an A, and 1 octave higher in transversal direction it's another A, and in depth it would correspond on a normal scale to an E, and A to E is a quite nice interval also, so kind of a musical interval, and this is why I've chosen it to be like this, even though diverting a bit from the original plan. The other things which I've tried on this cabinet was to mount the speaker flush into the front face, which is what I prefer. What I also did, but I cannot really show you here anymore, is I created a kind of a funnel, just really using the thickness of the wood that I've used. It's an 18 millimeter thick wood that I used for this cabinet, and I rounded off all of the edges, forming a little bit like a horn, which was what was also suggested by Janos. And I mounted the speaker from the back to it. I must admit that I would have said it was not really too much to my liking. I cannot say that I did dislike it, but it was, if I would have to choose between the two different ways of mounting, I would put it onto the front. It seems like, I'm very sensitive to any kind of horn coloration or any kind of horn effect, and I just don't like this. So that's why it might be the reason. Maybe there's some other reasons, but this is just really how I would describe the difference between front and rear mounted. Of course, there are other things which also contribute. It's also the length of the speaker to the back wall of the housing, and so on. What I also tried with those speakers now is I really moved them around quite a bit, and I also put them into different positions. I already mentioned that this obviously is not really the position I would use to listen to, but I would really put them on, let me see where, here on top of my speakers. Also with the driver at the bottom or with the driver at the top. So rotating them by 180 degrees. So using it like this, putting it onto the speaker, or taking the loudspeaker, turning it 180 degrees so that the port would fire up against the roof. But what I found was much better than those two combinations was to actually use the speaker and to lie it flat. So to turn it 90 degrees and to have the port firing against the wall. And this was definitely by absolutely, no doubt at all, the best position I had with the speaker. I think it might be linked to the active cabinet situation, because of course when you put it down, you also more or less stop or damp massively whatever happens on the wall, which is then lying flat onto something else. And this maybe could be a reason for it, but maybe some other things apply also, which I cannot really explain, not really also the topic of the video. The other thing still to mention about the speakers is that for such a very simple and very cheap design, they are excellent. They are really very good, and it's impressive also how they perform in the lower frequency range. Maybe it surprises you anyway, because you're not expecting it due to the just really 80mm active surface that you've got. The 80mm cones are like, for most of the loudspeaker design is not even sufficient for a mid-range speaker. So that is really very astonishing, and I think it also goes beyond the effect of being surprised, because you know it has got this small surface area, and you're not even expecting some bass to come out of these loudspeakers, which then of course increases the surprise. So there's really quite something which, depending on your room, of course, how these loudspeakers perform. But nevertheless, the other thing which I also have to say, and I built the speakers not really because they will be the best speakers of all times and this would be my target system, but I just really wanted to have an anchor or a reference point for my listening, and for also just really judging about some of the comments which I then also hear through the web. So if somebody comments about a certain sound or something, I know roughly what they are talking about, and if this is following a bit my thinking on my ideas and my observations, and this is why one of the main reasons why I built them. But again, I think my more or less kind of improvised emergency two-way speakers, they just really beat the hell out of this petit loudspeakers. They are much better in any single aspect. And again, it is not really that I think that the petit speakers are bad. Absolutely not at all. They are phenomenal, really. They are very good speakers for what they are. But of course then they also have got their limitations. And the naturalness and directness that you get out of them is very astonishing. And the drivers, I paid for the driver just a little bit about 40 euros, so it's incredible value for money that you're getting for some really good speakers. But nevertheless, I think these stupid silly two-way speakers, they are just really heads and shoulders above. Nevertheless, The other things are just really for some future system and future updates is that I've been playing around with those pretty large and heavy horn drivers. And I was once inspired thinking also into the Western Electric direction and to maybe have got something which is more going towards this. And I actually did also some experiments, but don't really want to talk about this here now. But I got those RCF drivers, and it's this type here now. They sound really nice. So they are really nice speakers, drivers, and I listen to them just really lying with the back to the top of a loudspeaker or directed into my direction, and of course they don't work as a full range speaker, but nevertheless, I think it's really interesting, nice listening, if you just really listen to the drivers themselves. And the one thing which I did as well now, and there's still also a little bit of work to be done, let's call it, is to also then reduce the horn effect of those. And especially with this type, it's pretty easy because this is one of the advantage if you are willing to go for neodymium drivers. I know this also has been criticized. Nevertheless, to me, it's a magnetic system, and you just need a lot less volume as magnetic material to come to a quite high magnetic field in the coil area than with other materials. It also has got what I would call a very high magnetic stiffness. So I think to me this is one of the bigger differences when comparing different materials. You've just really ranking it from a lower to a higher energy product is the right expression as far as I remember. So more or less how much magnetic field you can create with a it's very simplified of course now, how much volume of a magnet you need to achieve, let's call it, a certain flux or a certain field. And the lowest grade certainly is the ferrite magnets, and you can see that very easy because they are usually huge to saturate the iron, which is used as plates for the magnetic field. Then next one up is the alnico. I think they are lying in between the neodymium and the ferrite. Then there would be some categories up compared to the alnico versions, which could be samarium cobalt magnets, but they are not really used in for loudspeakers. And then certainly the strongest would be the neodymium ones. This is one of those drivers here. And what I think is very interesting about this one, I know it applies also to other drivers, is that basically everything is mounted to the magnetic system here for this particular driver. Unfortunately, the how you call it, the diaphragm, not quiet, but yeah. Because what you can do here is you just take this off. So this is more or less just the adapter, and I don't really like it already, just because you can hear it already ringing, this metallic ringing noise, and it just really mounted to here. I must admit that I did not really notice it too much when listening to it, because let's say the power of this driver is just massive, it's enormous, but nevertheless this is what you've got. So what you're remaining with, or what remains is almost something like a dome driver or dome speaker, But obviously here also behind the small screen you can see still the, maybe you can't, but you can see the, how you say, the structure that finally connects and the channels that finally connect to the back side of the driver where the diaphragm sits. And I can turn this one around here, and this is the rear housing, and also here, I don't know if you hear it from the camera, there's also this metallic ringing sound. So what I've got in mind with those ones, with one of them I already tried, or I already removed the back cover. You can do this very easy by just really removing the screws. Then it opens up, but then what's not great on those drivers is that the rear housing also clamps the diaphragm, and this is what's a little bit the problem, because I would ideally like to use the driver without any rear housing, or at least machine a bloody big hole into the back. It's a 100mm diaphragm for this one here, and to have it also radiating towards the back, and to have the so that I've got a kind of a two-directional speaker, one which has got the complete rear of the diaphragm exposed and radiating to somewhere. I didn't really make up my mind what I could do with it or how I treat it in the best way. And the other side, just really, normally doing the horn thing. I was even thinking of, because in my plan for this one here, or for any loudspeaker, would be to have something omnidirectional again. I had an Ohm F, one of the original earlier ones, for I would say 20-25 years almost, and I'm still missing a little bit some of the qualities of this speaker, even though it also had quite some drawbacks and needed regular maintenance and servicing to perform best. But I like the sound stage, and let's say just really this room filling, not really, I would say, recognizable direction of the sound. It doesn't really hit what I wanted to express exactly, but it has got a very transparent, non-touchable, non-tangible, but still fully present sound in the room, and this is something which I really liked a lot, which I'm missing with any of the direct speakers here. So I would like to come back to this one again, and the main reason why I'm starting with all of this here is to come to something which is omnidirectional again, and I hope that I'm succeeding with this kind of driver, and get it to work. So I think that is what comes to mind right now, and I maybe give you some update from time to time about what I'm doing here. Also, just really because it's a bit of a reference for myself, what I'm trying to do, and also what have been my findings when just really trying a couple of different things. The one thing which I need gets more and more obvious now, especially after the Darling amp really performs so fantastically, is obviously to still continue work on this one. But initially I didn't really think about using any digital as a sound source for the amp or for listening in general. But Yeah, sometimes it's quite nice still also to listen to a stream or even to play some CDs. I still have got a couple of CDs left, even though I have to say that a lot of them I just really gave away. And this would be then the next object that I probably will be working on. This is an Onkyo 7355 CD player, also pretty old. I bought it from new. Now you can get it for like 50 euro or whatever. But it was once, or it once had quite a good reputation as a CD player, and I think it's a nice one as well. Even though I don't really have too much of a comparison, and I have to say my vinyl is still much better than the CD, but this is something I'd like to change, and that will be also one of the things I'm looking for.